Super Rugby Round 9 Friday games. We've got 2 games on Good Friday. So fingers crossed we're going to get good attendances for both these games. Crusaders Blues. It's a battle at the top of the log down in Christchurch with the 2 top New Zealand teams. And then Rebels Reds. An improving Rebels side up against one of the top sides in Australia in the Reds. We'll go through some key events. No, we haven't had the key events yet. We'll go through some predictions, some stats and the lineups. And you guys can let me know your thoughts on how these games may play out. The Crusaders, in that first game, they're without a few locks. No Dunshea, no Whitelock, no Quinton Strange. So they've had to bring in Zach Gallagher to start alongside Scott Barrett. I think he's having his first start. So it's, I don't want to say thrown in the deep end because they are at home and he's got Scott Barrett next to him. So it's not too bad. It could be away from home. But certainly it'll be a big test for him. Ollie Jaeger's back in the side this week alongside Cody Taylor and Joe Moody. So it's looking pretty strong in the Type 5, albeit with a bit of an experience in the second row. Blackadder, Christie and Grace make up the same back rows last week, so pretty tidy. Matera is back in on the bench. Remember, I think he was a late scratching last week from memory. Bryn Hall gets the nod this week ahead of Drummond. They are forever in rotation, those 2 guys. Moonga still at 10. Harvilli and Enos the midfield. Whaingaruku's up to the wing alongside Reese, and Will Jordan is there at fullback. So, yeah, it means George Bridge has to ride the pine for a week. So it's a little bit of rotation, a little bit of tinkering. There's certainly a few guys out injured. But, yeah, it's still a pretty tidy looking Crusaders squad, you'd have to say. I mean, that back line. All Black at 15, All Black at 14, All Black at 13, All Black at 12, All Black at 10. And then a couple of guys who at some point in their career, Bryn Hall must have been close at some point. And Lester Whaingaruku may be close at some point in the future. So pretty tidy. For the Blues, they are still without Caleb Clark, remember, because he is suspended. But we've got Nepo Laulala back from his suspension. And Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is back from his injury. However, both of those guys return on the bench rather than being chucked in the starting lineup. I'm probably glad that Tuivasa-Sheck, because he's not had a lot of 15s since his conversion from league. He's not had a lot of game time. So to go away to the Crusaders and start might be a bit much when you're up against the likes of Harvilli and Eno, who've pretty vastly experienced and both international. So, yeah, Hodgman, Tuing, and Fussy are the 2 props. Eklund is still there, a hooker. He's having a pretty tidy season. Former Crusader Luke Romano, he gets to go back to his former stomping ground and see if he can make an impression. And he's alongside Josh Goodhue, Tom Robertson, Dalton Papali'i, and Hoskins at 2-2. That's also a pretty tidy back row. So the battle of the back rows this week is going to be certainly one to watch to see who gets on top. The backs is Christie. Remember, he was a late scratching last week. He's named at 9. Bodie's at 10. It's that battle again between Moonga and Barrett, so that's one to watch in itself. Midfield is Heeman Ioane. Talea moves to the left wing. AJ Lamb is in on the right wing, and Perofeta is still there at fullback. Zan Sullivan is named alongside Ratsumai Tavuki Neepkins. We'll have to see who starts. I think it'll be Sullivan if he is fit. Yeah, it's a pretty good Blues lineup. But man, we don't beat the Crusaders. We haven't beaten the Crusaders for years. The last time we beat the Crusaders, there was a little bit of hype around the Blues, and we lost. What was I wrote it down? Like 29-6 down in Christchurch last year. So not holding my breath. I still think the Crusaders are going to be big-time favourites, even if they haven't quite hit their full straps this year. I think this is maybe the week the Crusaders take it to top gear against my Blues. The Blues will have some mental pressure because they haven't beaten the Crusaders in such a long time. Stats-wise, you're looking at the 2 most mauling teams in New Zealand. They like a wee maul, do both of these sides. The Highlanders aren't far behind, to be fair. But, yeah, expect some mauls, which has been a bit of news in New Zealand media this last kind of 7 days. Also, the Blues concede the most penalties of the 5 New Zealand teams, not including Moana Pacifica. And the Crusaders have the most kicks from hand, which I've mentioned every week. So, yeah, tactically, at the back, you've got to get things right against the Crusaders because if you're out of position, they are going to find that space with the boot. Predictions-wise, the bookies have got the Crusaders by 4, and the Rugby Forecast algorithm has the Crusaders by 1. The next game is the Rebels and the Reds. Remember, Nu'u had a red card last week for the Rebels, so they've had to do a bit of rejigging, which has seen Andrew Callaway shift from the outside backs into 13, and Stacey Ely has switched from 13 to 12. So that's a little bit of disruption, not ideal, but I mean, what are you going to do, right? Michael Wells has also shifted from 8 to 6 this week to make way for Tamati Ioane, who, from memory, had a pretty big game of ball carrying a while back, but my memory is not what it used to be. My memory was never good, to be fair. The front row is looking pretty... I mean, anytime I see Cobus Eloff there as named, I'm a pretty happy chap, because in terms of... Apart from Taniela Tupou, he's one of the most entertaining props in the world because he just loves a carry. We are still waiting for Pone Fa'amusili to make his return because he would also be in that race as well. James Hansen's getting the start. I didn't read if Uelese is injured, but he's always injured, so I'm assuming he is injured, unfortunately. Josh Hill's getting the start this week. Josh Canham's back on the bench. Brad Wilkin drops to the bench. It's a 6-2 split. I'm guessing they think the battle up front is going to be a big one up against this Reg side. Tamua and Tuttle still the 10 and 9 respectively. I'm pleased for Hardwick getting a good run because I think he came back and he started on the bench, but he's played his way back into the starting 15, and I do think the Rebels look better when he is in the side. So yeah, that's your Rebels squad. I should have mentioned George Worth starting on the wing and Hodgie is still at fullback. For the Reds, not too much tinkering, but the big news is Suliasi Vunivalu is back on the wing. There's still been some talk about him potentially abandoning ship and going back to rugby league because his time in the Reds has been very disrupted by injury. He can't seem to catch a break, but fingers crossed he stays fit for a wee while. He's on the right wing. Pataya's still there at fullback, and Dalgunu is on the left wing. So that's a very attacking looking back three. Paisami and Stewart in the midfield. O'Connor and Tate McDermott, the 10 and 9. So as far as Aussie backlines go, that has to be up there with the best. I mean, Pataya's a Wallaby. They want to make Vunivalu a Wallaby if he can get some game time under his belt. Paisami's a Wallaby. Hamish Stewart's not, but he's a tackling machine. Dalgunu's a Wallaby. O'Connor's a Wallaby. And McDermott's a Wallaby. So just like the Crusaders lineup, similarly, it's pretty much a backline full of internationals and a couple of guys who are there or thereabouts. And the back row, man, Wilson, McWright, and Connor Vest. Only Vest is not a Wallaby of those guys. So yeah, man, it's certainly a very interesting looking Red side. That being said, they have put Tupou on the bench. Scott Young's back into the 23 on the bench as well. So yeah, we'll see what damage Tupou can do when he comes on. Stats wise, the Rebels have conceded the most clean breaks of the 5 Aussie teams, so excluding the Drua, and the Reds have conceded the fewest tries all in all of Super Rugby. So that would tell you that the Reds may be going to have a good time, but it'd be nice to see. I haven't done it. It'd be nice to see the Rebels week-on-week stats because I do feel like they are improving. Both sides' goal-kicking rate is pretty poor, but the Rebels got it done last week, whereas the Force could have had a win if they'd kicked their goals, but they didn't. It was the Rebels' boot that was more accurate. So, yeah, we'll kind of have to see how things go. I do feel like the Rebels are tracking well. They lost 23-5 in round 1, so I don't think it'll be quite that lopsided this week. I do think the Rebels are better value than that, but the Reds should still be pretty big-time favourites. Bookies say Reds by 9. Rugby Forecast says Reds by 6. So either way, it's supposed to be the Reds that get this one done. You guys let me know your thoughts on these ones. How do you reckon they're going to go? Can you see the Rebels upsetting the Reds at home? Can you see the Blues beating the Crusaders for the first time in a long time? Personally, I'm going to be picking the Crusaders and the Reds. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts, and I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.